Hi there Nerd Squad, my name is Amanda McKnight and I'll be your host for this nerdy list. You loved our part 1, so here is the part 2 for the top 10 scary Avengers origin stories. Boo. Before we dive in, I want to ask you, what do you find the most chilling and disturbing in regards to origin stories? What's worse? A freak accident causing powers? Having them triggered by a traumatic experience? Turning superhero after suffering a great injustice? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Alright friends, onwards. Number 10. Robbie Reyes, aka Ghost Rider. Making his first appearance in Marvel Comics in 2014, Robbie Reyes was introduced to us as the all-new Ghost Rider. His origin story is different and possibly more terrifying than that of his predecessor Johnny Blaze, but maybe not as scary as that of other fellow Ghost Rider Alejandro Jones. We are introduced to Robbie as he is struggling to improve his and his little brother Gabe's quality of life, working hard to get them out of the dangerous neighborhood of East LA that they live in. Robbie enters a street race in an attempt to win 50 grand and hopefully get them to a safer neighborhood for good. Unfortunately, the cops chase and corner Robbie when he accidentally turns down a dead end. Unbeknownst to Robbie, the stolen car he entered the race with is filled with drugs, which the cops are after. The officers gun him down and set the car and Robbie ablaze, leaving him to die. Fortunately, the car had a ghost, and this ghost bonds with Robbie, saving him and transforming him into, you guessed it, Ghost Rider. We later find out that the ghost belongs to someone Robbie once knew, making the story even more terrifying. In the spirit of avoiding spoilers, I'd encourage you to read the all-new Ghost Rider series to find out more. Robbie Reyes joins the Avengers in Avengers Volume 8. Number 9. Moondragon. Moondragon is the daughter of Drax the Destroyer. Sort of. I'm getting ahead of myself. Cue origin story. Heather Douglas, as she was once known, was the daughter of Arthur and Yvette Douglas. Heather's dad was in a band, and after a successful show in Las Vegas, the family was driving home when suddenly Thanos decided to visit Earth. Thanos observed the family but did not want any witnesses of his arrival, and so he killed them all. Fortunately, or maybe not so fortunately depending on how you view things, Mentor showed up. He pitied the family and offered Arthur the opportunity of being resurrected. Arthur accepted this offer based around his desire for vengeance, and so he and Heather were resurrected with this purpose in mind. Arthur became Drax and Heather became Moondragon. Moondragon adopted her name after training with monks on Titan and defeating a psychic entity called the Dragon of the Moon. Her power and a quest for vengeance has caused her to do some pretty terrible things, despite also leading her to join the Avengers team for a time, even being offered full membership during the lengthy but original run of the series in Volume 1, Issue 151. Number 8. Beast. Having a similar origin story to that of Bruce Banner, Beast was originally a scientist and gentle giant. Beast was born a mutant but was one of the lucky few who went unnoticed. Save for having a large stature, large hands and feet, and a superior intellect, he appeared normal. His scary origin story was a result of his own hubris. While studying mutant genetics at the Brand Corporation, he became worried that an envious colleague, Dr. Maddox, was attempting to steal his research and formula based around the chemical cause of mutation. Yep. Hank had it all. Not only was he strong, smart, and sitting on a scientific breakthrough, but he had also found love at Brand Corp with Linda, his beautiful and brilliant lab assistant. However, in his pride, he attempted to protect his formula from being stolen by drinking it, causing him to change for what he estimated would be an hour. Unfortunately, the drink caused a Jekyll and Hyde type horror story where Hank would forever become both Jekyll and Hyde, struggling to hold on to his humanity, as both on the outside and occasionally on the inside he was stuck looking like and feeling like a beast. Number 7. Sunspot. When Roberto da Costa was 14, his superhero story began and his traumatic mutant transformation took place. During the school championship soccer match, Roberto was beaten on the field by members of the opposing team because of the color of his skin. What stops this blatant racism and assault? Surprisingly, not a referee. No, what stops the assault is Roberto's mutation. He turns into a dark ball of energy. Unaware of what is happening, he calls to his friends and teammates, but everyone is terrified of Roberto and flees. His girlfriend Juliana is one of the few who does not run away from him, but instead runs into his arms. However, even Juliana's love is not enough to save this horror story. The two are kidnapped and put with other young mutants. During an escape attempt, a scuffle ensues which results in Roberto being shot at. Juliana jumps in front of the bullets, lasers, and dies, sacrificing her life for his. Roberto adopts the mantle Sunspot and ends up joining the Avengers later on, even owning AIM at one point. Number 6. Rogue. You know I had to put Rogue on this list. I figure most of you know the tragic origin story of this Avenger and famous X-Men, but for those who don't, here we go. Rogue was a teenage runaway who eventually found her first love with a boy named Cody Robbins. Cody was also her first kiss, which, let's be honest, if we all remember our first kiss, I'm sure it was awkward enough, though not nearly as awkward or traumatic as it was for Rogue, I'm sure. Her first kiss was also when her mutant powers started to manifest themselves. Rogue's powers involve her absorbing life energy through touch, in case you didn't know. This meant that her first kiss and first victim, Cody, was left in a coma. Add that to the fact that she ended up being basically raised, used, and somewhat brainwashed by Mystique, and you've got one crazy origin story for our girl Rogue. She joins the Avengers in the Uncanny Avengers series issue number 4. Number 5. Jessica Drew. I'm not sure how to describe Jessica Drew's origin story, which has also changed over the years, like most of our favorite Avengers and Marvel characters. Is her story scary? Yes. But is it also a strange combination of weird and tragic? Yes. Her original origins, when she first appeared in the comics in 1977, was that she was actually a spider who had turned into a human. However, the story of how she came to have her powers changed once Marvel realized that this idea might be too out there, even for their readers, and even for the 70s. Instead, her story now follows that her dad was a geneticist who sort of accidentally, but also kind of purposefully, poisoned his daughter with uranium exposure. Their home was on a giant uranium deposit, and he thought that was fine. In order to save her, but also as a kind of weird experiment, he injected her with an arachnid serum, created based around his knowledge of the regenerative properties of spider blood. This worked, but due to the fact that it was a slow process, Jessica had to be kept in stasis during the healing time. By the time she was all better, she awoke from stasis as an adult woman, without really any experience in growing up. Not only is that freaky enough, but she also ends up discovering her newfound powers when she accidentally kills the first person she has a romance with. Oh yeah, she also gets brainwashed by Hydra. Poor Jess. Number 4. The Fantastic Four. I just realized I made them number 4. All 4 of the Fantastic Four have joined the Avengers at one point or another, unsurprisingly in my opinion, as the Fantastic Four seem to be the Marvel team to connect almost all Marvel teams, having some kind of relationship with almost every Marvel character. For their origin story, we have to flip way back in comic book history to the early 60s. A rocket ship's test flight goes awry when Reed Richards, Susan Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm are exposed to cosmic rays as they break through the Earth's atmosphere. These cosmic rays transform them into the Fantastic Four. When put that simply, it sounds fine and, kinda awesome. But as many of the film adaptations and Ben Grimm's suicidal moods have demonstrated, the Fantastic Four origins are definitely more horror story than Cinderella's story. Number 3. Wolverine. Another gruesome one for the books. Wolverine joined the Avengers team in the New Avengers series. Another X-Men as well, whose mutation was brought on by a traumatic experience. Maybe that's in part why Logan and Rogue have such an intense bond. Logan was the legitimate son of Elizabeth Howlett, who had an affair with his father, Thomas Logan, the groundskeeper of his mother and her husband's huge estate. Logan grew up being abused by his grandfather and also traumatized by his half-brother, who killed his puppy. He discovered he was a mutant after watching his biological father murder his mother's husband, who was kinda like a father to him, in cold blood. And of course, Wolverine's abilities involve claws which tear through his skin, so you can imagine just how terrifying that must have been. And that is just the beginning of his origins. Let me tell you, it does not get much better from there. Including, but not limited to, Logan being raised by wolves, only to have his wolf family murdered by a polar bear. Number 2. Deadpool. Lovable, violent, and tragic. Probably the 3 words that describe this anti-hero, and that's right, Avenger, the best. Wade Wilson is also known for being mentally ill and unstable, which means that his backstory has always been somewhat unclear, as it seems hard for him to remember it. Ryan Reynolds' first Deadpool film gave us a glimpse of his comic book origin story, and while some details were left out, the film followed the same trajectory. Namely, that he broke up with his girlfriend, also Vanessa in the comics, due to his uncurable cancer, and that he agreed to be tested on by Weapon X. As a result, he was granted healing powers, which eventually ended up leaving him scarred. Oh, and he also had a friend in the warehouse/hospital where they were kept. and there was even an Ajax, so not super far off, but still equally scary and upsetting. Number 1. Punisher. Obviously, I had to make Punisher my number 1. His origin story to me is the most tragic and terrifying. Why? Because imagine if you were in Frank Castle's shoes. The Punisher, aka Frank Castle, served in the military and during one of his times on leave ended up with his family in Central Park where they stumbled upon mob dealings they were not meant to see. Fearing witnesses, the mobsters murdered Frank Castle, his 2 children, and his wife. Unfortunately, Frank managed to survive and was left with the loss of his family and a need for revenge that was denied him by the courts and police as they were being controlled and corrupted by the very mafia that took out Frank's family. Castle decided to take matters into his own hands and adopted the mantle the Punisher, swearing to get revenge for his family by any means necessary, making him a huge anti-hero similar to Deadpool but much more serious. You can explore Castle's level of hurt and just how far Punisher is willing to go to fight for revenge in Netflix's Daredevil series and their Punisher series. He respectfully joins the Avengers ranks in the Savage Avengers series. And that's all she wrote, folks. I hope you enjoyed this list, and sorry for all the X-Men mentions. I got mutants on the brain today apparently. I also have to give an honorable mention as well to Wonder Man before I go, who did not make this list but who has a bizarre and freaky backstory and history with the Avengers. If you want to hear more about Wonder Man or other scary Avengers origin stories, let us know in the comments below. Maybe we'll do a part 3, who knows? As always, my fellow nerds, thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. I do try to read the comments and love hearing from you. This is Top 10 Nerd, and my name is Amanda McKnight, reminding you to stay nerdy, YouTube.